Thanks for tuning in to the C-Suite Cyber Podcast, brought to you by Watchdog Cyber. Join us as we explore the critical intersection of business and cybersecurity, helping you protect your company, your customers, and your reputation. Whether you're a CEO, a CFO, or hold any other executive role in your company, the C-Suite Cyber Podcast is your go-to resource for staying ahead in today's digital age. Hey everyone, it's Aaron and Dan again with Watchdog Cyber, and this is the C-Suite Cyber Podcast. Dan, what are we talking about today?
Well, today we want to talk about basically, how businesses can stay compliant with industry regulations and also cyber insurance policies, the requirements that they have, and then just some, cybersecurity standards that they should be aware of.
Got it. Okay. Where do you want to start with this?
Well, let's start with maybe some of the easier stuff. Let's start with the compliance part of it, because there's some regulations out there that are being revised. There's some that are changing. I think the first one that comes to mind is PCI compliance. March 31st of next year, PCI 4.0 should be in place for businesses. And I was just having a conversation yesterday. I think I may have told you a little bit. He has a business that puts in credit card readers. And the conversation was really like his clients do not know what they need to know about PCI compliance. And so that's why he called us, right? He said, "Hey, can you help out?" He wants us to help his clients, which is good because the clients are thinking we just got to run the card and, pretty much we're done. We do our, our SAQ and we hit a button and we're supposed to be compliant, which there's a lot more that goes into it than that, especially on their end, the controls they have to put in place, the security that has to be put in place. So that's a big one. I don't know, if you want to add anything onto the PCI side of it. I know you've done a lot of reading and stuff like that.
Yeah, I know, with PCI, some of the important things are like, yeah, great, you're using a third party, right, to handle some of the credit card transactions and whatever. And a lot of people think like, oh, because I'm using this third party, I don't really have to worry about the controls. I don't have to worry about compliance. I don't have to worry about it. And unfortunately, that's not the case, right? There's still a level of things that you have to do to maintain compliance, even for your own business, right?
Right.
And what does non-compliance mean from a PCI standpoint? Well, that means you can either start getting higher rates with the merchants, or that means out of compliance means you can no longer accept credit cards.
Right.
So could have a pretty significant impact on business and how you operate and how you get paid.
Right. Well, you mentioned a good point, the interest, or not the interest, the service charge that they have to add to the card, right? I don't know about you, but I see a lot of merchants starting to add that. If you pay by credit card, they up it 3%, 4%, whatever, because they're tired of paying that. It's coming out of their profit line. Imagine paying 6 or 7 or 8% because you are not compliant, right? And you got to pay that until you get compliant. So that's a big chunk, and it hits the bottom line.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, another one that comes to mind is, anybody in the healthcare space, you've got HIPAA, right?
Yeah.
And now there's some proposed legislation with what's known as HISA, which is taking basically all the security controls that were in HIPAA and really defining them. And so, the Health and Human Services Department at the federal level is going to be tasked with working with DHS and CISA to start developing some frameworks to better protect healthcare.
Right.
Which, I mean, after all the breaches in healthcare this year, I think that's probably a good step forward.
Yeah. I mean, being number one in something usually means good stuff. Being number one in a tax, that's not good. You
Yeah.
don't want to be there. No, for sure. Well, I think, and that too, also, I think you told me they're going to, so when you talk about compliance, there's no compliance police per se,
Yep.
right? No one's going to knock down somebody's door. They're not going to go to a restaurant and start doing an audit. It's after the fact. It's after the breach happens. That's when all hell breaks loose and your business gets turned inside out and they're looking for information. When did it happen? How did it happen? What's going on? They want to see what happened. And then you got to start paying out, could be class action lawsuits, could be just all the things that add up after the fact. Um, so it's it has to be on the owner's mind to want to secure, the customer's information. In healthcare, you got the patients. For PCI, you've got everybody run their credit cards through your system because they went to your place of business. But they could just as well be like, yeah. I think Matt told me, I think it was 34.95, I think, a month that they have to pay if they're not compliant.
Mm.
So again, and I said, well, that's it. Other than the rates, right? The rates could go up, the service charge. But um, there's people I've talked to, I think they'd rather pay the 35, 90, 30, whatever, 30, $40 a month
Yeah.
and not worry about all the others. They're just like, whatever, I don't care about that.
Well, I
Which
mean, think about some of the conversations we've had even in our own professional network, right? Like we've got buddies down in Atlanta and a pretty significant restaurant down there.
hmm,
They failed their SAQ
yeah,
with Amex, and
yeah,
Amex said, "Well, one of two things: you're going to start getting in alignment with what we want, or we're going to pull services. You know, you're not going to be able to accept our cards as
right,
payment,
right.
or for $80,000 a year, we'll allow you to continue to do
Yeah,
that."
jeez. Yeah, and if you're a business that's not, maybe you're only doing a couple hundred or a couple thousand transactions a month, right? I mean, 80 grand a year, that's a big number. No
Uh,
business owner wants to pull that out of their bottom line. I mean,
right.
nobody would want to, right? At any level, I would think. It
Well,
just wouldn't.
and restaurants are so low margin to begin with.
Yeah,
You know.
right, right. Yeah. I think those are probably the two biggest ones. I know that, well, CMMC is another one that's, so what their date is, what, January 25th, I think, of next year. They're supposed to be have all the certifications done. Um, who's going to check? I'm a betting man, and I think they're going to push that date off again because they don't have enough people
Yeah.
that are certified. They're not going to pull all those contracts. DoD's not going to pull all those contracts. It just isn't going to happen. That's my two
Yeah.
cents.
I think you're right with that, and I think that's kind of the thought you were going down a few minutes ago, right? Is there isn't really an audit police, but with that being said, with CMMC and again proposed HISA, um, there is, I mean, part of that proposal is actually doing proactive audits and
Yeah,
coming in to make sure that you are doing the things you should. And it's not, like PCI, right? The SAQ stands for self assessment questionnaire, right? So
right.
you get to say whatever the heck you
Yeah,
want. You
right.
can be truthful or you can pencil whip it, which we see a
Right.
lot.
Yep.
Um, but with HISA and CMMC, there isn't going to be a lot of room for
Yeah.
so-called pencil whipping, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yep.
basically telling you you've got to be using a third-party organization to audit your environment at least annually.
Yeah.
And that'll probably change to be more frequent as time goes, for
Right.
sure.
Well, we talked about that this morning, right? If you're going to do it annually, think of all the changes that could happen within that year, right? If your environment, if you're starting to be concerned about your environment, you should be monitoring it constantly. We had our conversation today. I'm not going to say what customer, but we did the pen test and we gave the list to the IT provider, and it's been 4 months and
Yeah.
there's still stuff that looks the same, right? So what do you do? I don't know. Somebody's got to be on top of that stuff. And this is a great example where they need companies like us to help the company manage their IT people if they're doing some of that work. but also those people don't do the security side of things. I know we're talking about compliance right now, but I think you could say, right, the three-legged stool: IT support, cybersecurity, and compliance. You got
Hmm.
to have them all. They all got to be done right, but you can't have one person doing all of those. You
Yeah.
just can't do it. And that's where I think it starts to fall down, right? Is you companies think they can. Well, let's say they think cybersecurity and IT can be done by one person. Compliance is one of those things like we just talked about. Yeah, just answer the questions and we're done with that. Like, move on, right? Let's make our widgets. Let's serve our food. Let's do our thing. Like, we're a restaurant. We're, a manufacturing company. So they're going to start paying more attention. Like you said, these other agencies are getting put in place, and it's only a matter of time. Why wait till the last minute? And we've got people waiting on PCI compliance. Well, we're coming in the holidays. They got till the end of March next year. Is everyone going to call us at, you know, St. Patrick's Day and say, "Oh yeah, I got to get that done." So does 500 other people that that have called us. You know what I mean? It's just, why
Yeah.
wait so long to the very end? But
Yeah. I mean,
it happens.
the changes went into effect March of this year, right?
Right. Right.
The mandation to have them in place is March
Yeah.
31 of next. So,
Right. I
um,
know. We all wait till the last minute. I do it. I'm not throwing stones. I'm just making a note here.
sure.
So anyways,
Another
yeah.
prevalent one I would say is FTC safeguard,
Yeah. Well, yeah,
right?
right. Yeah. That
Uh,
changed a lot. That changed a lot.
that was that June of 23 was the initial rollout of that.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And there's been changes since. And, again, um, if you're an organization that quote unquote acts as a financial institution,
Mhm.
so examples of that would be automotive dealerships, um, real estate brokers, um,
A recreational vehicle place, right? You
yeah,
sell ATVs or boats, like any originated loan. If you're doing, like, you now fall under that. I just don't think they do. Or again, they fall under,
CPAs.
yeah, or they fall back under like, meh, who's gonna come and see, right? Like, I just, it's crazy.
Yeah. So, I mean, FTC is I wouldn't say it's super intense, but I mean, they definitely have an outline of
Yeah.
things that you need to have, right? You need to have somebody that's a designated, uh, quote unquote, security officer, right? You've got
Mm-hmm.
to have a written
Mm-hmm.
information security plan. You got to have an incident response plan. You've got to
Right.
have penetration testing done regularly. You got to have vulnerability assessments done
Right.
regularly, right? And like, again, thinking about what you just said a few minutes ago, we were working with a customer who they brought us in to do a penetration test for their organization. They've got an MSP in place. Again, we went through the paces with that. Today, we just decided to
I
check up on it,
I
and
know.
it boils back down to is like you as a business owner, you don't know what questions to ask as far as follow up, and you're just trusting, which
Right.
I'm not saying that you shouldn't trust,
Right.
but I mean, I know we say this all the time. You got to trust but verify, right?
Right.
So what are
Yep.
you doing? Like for that engagement, right? We billed the customer almost $10,000,
Yeah.
right? Um, they're working with an MSP who basically said, hey, we can do all this remediation, but it's going to be project work. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So let's just say that project was another 10 grand. So now they're $20,000 into this investment
Yeah.
to better tighten down their systems. And from what we see 4 months later,
Still the same.
the external piece at least hasn't
Right.
been taken care
External. Yeah.
of,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So, um, again, I think it comes down to trusting but verifying as well. And
Yeah.
so, that's part of the reason why we're doing this, this kind of mini series
Right.
of what C-suites should be asking either their IT provider or their IT departments.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's again, they have to be involved, right? I mean, that's why we started doing this. We're trying to help educate them so they know a little bit more about what they should know about what's going on. You don't have to know the details. You don't want to know the how to set it up and configure it. You don't need to know all that stuff, right? But these are questions about risk for the company. That's what it boils down to. This is not about technology. We're not talking about our conversations are not about IT. Well, think of the webinars we just did, right? In the seminars. It was not about infrastructure. It was not about
Yeah.
computers. It was not about servers. It wasn't about Wi-Fi access. It was about cybersecurity, right? And it's a completely different subject. I
Yeah.
think people just lumped it into IT for so long that they become numb to it,
Hmm.
not realizing that if a breach happens, holy crap, this is a big deal now, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, maybe we got to pull some people on the podcast that have had a breach. Um, I just read in the Cranes, um, it was the guy that oh man, I got it right here. They went through a breach and he wished he didn't because it's in there. It was oh man, it was a well-known company too. But Wolverine Solutions Group in Detroit.
Mm.
And they went through it a few years ago, and he's like, it was the worst nightmare ever. And he
Yeah.
said, we were doing stuff right. We thought we were doing stuff right. So it goes back to your point again. When do you check? Once a year? That's not enough.
Right.
It's just not. And those are the things. How do you impress upon a CEO saying, "Hey, look, I'm not trying to make your guys look bad here, but you got some problems and they got to be resolved." You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's why we're doing this to help them understand the questions to ask.
Well, and I think another thing to take into consideration when thinking about compliance is compliance doesn't equal security, right?
Right.
And I think a prime example of that is again another recent interaction with a customer that we're trying to get them, trying to get them on a full security program. They are dragging their feet heavily, but they're going through an accreditation process, right? And they've got to be in compliance with the requirements for accreditation. Well,
Right.
they reached out and they said, "Hey, part of what they're asking is like we need a written information security plan, we need an acceptable use policy, we need all these policies." I think we ended up writing, I don't know, 10 or 12,
Yeah,
something
there's
like
almost a
that,
dozen. Yeah.
and we sent them over to them for initial review, right, to make sure A, is this in alignment with what you are trying to accomplish internally as an organization? B, did you have your legal team review it to make sure that
Right.
you're not overstepping with your employees? Um, and they didn't even read it. They didn't read anything that we sent over. Instead, they took everything we sent and just handed it over to their accreditation auditors and said, "Yep, here we go. Here's all of our
Right.
policies."
Right.
They have no, I mean, you and I joked
Well,
after that happened, right? Like I could have sprinkled throughout each policy document to say auditing sucks, auditors suck,
right.
blah blah
The
blah.
auditors aren't even going to read them anyways, either, right? They're just going to look at the title of it. But to go back through that, right, when you look and see the meat and potatoes and the controls that have to be put in place to to follow that policy, right? And I know we got a meeting with them, next beginning of next year, but um, now you dive into it and say, here's what you said you were doing. I mean, you can't not do this now, right?
Right.
But again, are they going to come knock on the door, finding no, not until a breach happens. So it's got to be on, again, this comes back to leadership. They have to understand that this is much bigger than just checking a box, right?
Hmm.
Putting a policy in place. I checked the box. I did that. No, because when what hits the fan, it gets ugly, and it's going to get ugly if you're not doing what you said you were doing. It just bottom line, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
just
true.
read it was I think it was Jesse Miller said we always say it's not if, it's when. And that's the truth. All
It is
these
the truth.
numbers are going up, right? Every year the number of attacks, how fast they're happening, the money is going up, everything. It's all going
everything.
on.
And I know we've pounded this drum 100 times. It doesn't matter your size, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
We've got solopreneurs and we've
Yeah.
got companies that are 500 plus seats
Yeah.
that we've talked to,
Right.
and everything in between.
Yeah. I know. It doesn't matter. And I just think I think the last few months have really I think this Change Healthcare. I got another person send me a thing. Hey, I just got this. Well, it's gonna take them probably a year to get to everybody. I mean, they're how many people was that? Like millions of people. You can't mail
Hundreds
that
of
much.
millions.
Yeah, you can't mail that. Yeah, right. You can't mail that many envelopes in a week. It's gonna
Yeah.
take a while, you know. So I don't know.
Well, and just touching on that briefly, right? So, you've gone through a breach. You've now got to make you've got to make your folks that were involved in the breach aware, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now you're
Mm-hmm.
sending out the notice letter. You're going to be purchasing identity theft protection for them, right?
Right.
I mean, we kind of started working through what those costs are. I
Right.
mean, just that piece alone can
Oh,
be in the millions depending on
yeah.
your company size
Yeah.
and what was leaked.
Right. Well, think about if you've got a million people, how many stamps is that? A million stamps. How
Right.
much are stamps now?
Almost 70 cents.
You're talking $700,000 in stamps,
Right.
right? Like, okay.
And that's
And now
before you buy envelopes
the
and
paper, the printing, the
yeah, I mean
right.
the
That's
the
just one
change
one thing.
the change notification letter, right? This was one,
Yeah.
two, three, four, five, six, seven.
Right.
This was 11 pages front and back, right?
Right. Right. Add that up. Hey, we're in the copier industry. That's 0.007 per page. Like, I mean, and plus the paper, that's just the printing cost. You might get a little less because you're gonna have to do a bajillion pages, but you'll get a good deal on it.
Yeah.
Just adds up, right? I mean, it's a little bit from a whole lot, and it goes up. So,
Yeah.
wow. Well, we talked about compliance a lot. Jeez, oh Pete's. It's crazy. I think we should touch on the other part of it. I think we should touch on is cybersecurity insurance.
Mm,
Um, it's not necessarily a federal mandate, not yet, but insurance underwriters are not liking paying out all this money, right? And insurance companies are now paying out the disasters that happened down in Florida and North Carolina and all that. All that money gets lumped in there. They're paying out a lot of money, and um, they want to mitigate their risk. The insurance companies do, just as they don't want to pay. So they're pushing those regulations down. I'll say requirements, not regulations, requirements down to companies to put in, right? Secure passwords, MFA, endpoint protection, security awareness training, right? Backups. They want that stuff in place because they know that can help reduce the risk of them getting breached,
hmm
which reduces their risk of having to pay out. It's just happening, right? I always tell people, don't shoot the messenger, man. I'm here to just kind of convey what you have to have in place, and it's their choice to do it, right? It's always their choice to do it.
Right.
So, but that's another one. Cyber liability insurance policies are another one that um, may not renew the way you want it to, right? They maybe you're up for renewal and they come in and go, hey, you got to fill this out, and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't have to do this last year. It's
Well,
changing.
and they're not created equally either. You
Right.
know,
Well, true.
uh,
Right.
we've seen some bad ones.
Uh,
Again, we've got colleagues that have shared some bad ones. I
hmm
saw one the other day. One of our colleagues on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
right? He shared a snippet of a policy for a $20 million in revenue business. The aggregate limit on the policy was 100K.
God. Yeah. Think about that. Think about we
That
just talked about
covers
all
like
the.
about a day and a quarter of downtime.
Oh my gosh, that ain't gonna cover the envelopes
Not to
for
mention,
all
yeah,
of.
right, yeah, right. Not to mention the supplements were just absolutely horrendous.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, it's a 100K policy aggregate, but the supplements
Right.
are just, I
Yeah.
mean, you're gonna blow through that money so quick.
For sure. Yeah. And
And
that's That's a shame. Shame on the agent for doing stuff like that. They just don't know. They don't know, and that's a problem. That's a big problem.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of made fun on that post too, and we're just because we all see
Right.
policies
Right.
like this, and they're shameful. I mean, they
Yeah.
just it's either the insurance agent doesn't know, and he just knows that you should have some type of cyber insurance protecting a cyber policy protecting your business, and that's all they know, right? Like,
Right.
well, yeah, we'll put this rider on your general liability line, and that's
Yeah.
what they sell.
Yeah.
Or you've got a bad agent that is just trying to get a money grab every
Yeah.
freaking time they turn around.
Right.
And if it's the latter, those people, I mean, I think we came to a consensus. They need to be tarred and feathered. I mean,
Well,
it's again,
yeah.
it's super shameful. If that's what you do day in and day out, and you go and talk to an organization that size, and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, 100K should be enough for you.
Yeah. The agency owner should be tarred and feathered, and anybody putting those. I mean, they should be training their people. How
Yeah.
this is a big deal. It isn't, and it's not going away. We just talked about all the numbers are going up. It's happening more often. How are you just playing so nonchalant with this? Like it's not going to happen. It's going to happen.
So again, there is a level of compliance even with cyber insurance, right?
Yeah.
Because, like you said, most policies nowadays are requiring strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, all the stuff you listed, right?
Right. Right.
So you have the option when you fill out the attestation form, which is it's a self attestation again, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
you have the option. Are you going to be truthful? Or are you going to say, well, yeah, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, just so you
Right.
can get a better rate? Well,
Right.
go ahead and lie on the attestation form.
Right.
And when it happens, see what happens when you try to file a
Yeah.
claim. It's not going to
Yeah.
be pretty in any way, shape, or form.
No, you can try and negotiate with them, but again, we just said at the beginning of this, right? This section of this conversation is the insurance companies do not want to pay. They
Right.
just they're not in the business of paying claims. They're in the
Nope.
business of making money. They can't
Yeah.
do that when they're paying all these claims out.
So I think, and I think the shift has already started happening based off of scuttlebutt that I've heard in the industry is you're going to start seeing insurance companies basically doing those proactive audits first
Yeah.
before they give you an attestation form
Right.
and
Right.
before they write a policy.
Yeah. Or they're going to say, prove it. Prove you got MFA on. Prove you got endpoint protection in. Show me something. Give me some reports that show you have this in place. Because how many times somebody fill out an application and say, okay, we can get that. Just say we got it and we'll go back and get it. Then they get busy and they don't do it.
Yep.
The other thing
Well, that
too, the
go ahead.
the thinking about like that. Let's say they said, okay, yeah, we have this, right? 3 months goes by, they didn't put it in place, and then all of a sudden they let's say they do put it in place. 2 more months goes by and they get breached. They're going to do forensics and find out that that breach happened before they had MFA in place, and that policy is not going to pay. Right?
Yep.
I mean, they can find that stuff out. It's like a 9-year-old or a 13-year-old trying to lie to his parents, saying, "Oh yeah, my homework's done." You better check. You better make sure you're doing this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Because when the report card comes and you're like, well, wait, you said you were doing all your
Right.
homework.
Right. Why is there 14 absences here? Oh man, it's crazy.
I think, one thing here is with the compliance piece of this, right? It's compliance to show you're compliant, you do have to provide the evidence, right?
Right.
Like you
Yep.
can't like sure you can have all the policies in place and you can say you have all the controls and
Hmm.
all of that. Um but when it boils down to having to produce evidence,
Right.
can you?
Right. Yeah. Do you have it documented? That's the big thing, right? Is it documented? Do you have it? I
Yeah.
think about us when we do a quarterly security briefing with our clients. Here's all the stuff, right? Here's everything that we've been doing. You've got some documentation. If you got to get more detailed to that, maybe you want 30-day reports. Hey, that's no problem, right? We don't need to meet every 30 days, but we can provide these reports for you, or at least have them archived for you in case something happens, right? But that's the difference between the cybersecurity company and IT company. IT company is not doing that kind of stuff. I don't want to
No,
say
I
I'm not. I
mean,
don't want to lump them all into it, but
yeah. No,
it's a
I mean,
very
there are
small
good ones
number.
out there. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
very small
mean,
number.
again, from the assessments we've done and the folks that we've talked to
Right.
over the last few years, it's been, well, when my IT company comes in, they tell us how many tickets we've closed
Right.
and how many times they've been on the
Yeah.
phone and that
Everything's
type of
good.
thing.
Like, okay.
So,
Yeah. But that's a level of understanding from the leadership, right? They don't know what to ask, which is why we're going back through this. I mean, there's 10 questions. This one round was, are we fully compliant with all the relevant industry regulations, cyber insurance policy requirements, and cybersecurity standards? The answer can't be just yes. Show me how we are compliant. Like, how
well,
am I
yeah.
going to pass this, right?
I mean, I would think as business leadership, you would know what regulatory
Yes.
requirements you need to be
Right.
compliant with. I would hope that you have a decent insurance broker that
Yep.
can explain to you what your cyber insurance policy covers, all of
What it
that.
should be. What? Yes. Right.
If you don't have a cyber insurance policy, you really need to have that conversation with your broker because if you don't have it in today's day and age, you're just,
Yeah.
I mean, all the expenses post breach are going to just come right out of
Yeah.
the bottom line,
Yeah.
right?
And if they try to give you a rider or they try to sell you some, hey, talk to somebody else. Get a second opinion on this. If you don't feel comfortable with what they're giving you, but if it's a rider on your business policy, don't do that. Right?
Yeah, and if you
Don't
need
do
help
that.
finding that additional contact, we can be a resource for that.
Yeah. Yeah, for
We've got a
sure.
lot of contacts in the insurance
Yep.
industry now after
Yeah. We've gone through a few. We've gone through a few.
um so what was the last part of that question? The
Just the cybersecurity standards. So
Oh,
like
yeah,
NIST, there's
NIST,
CIS, or yeah,
CIS. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So you just follow a framework, right? I mean, you got to have that in place. I mean, it just helps you stay in line. I mean, compliance and the framework sort of they'll cover, they kind of overlap, right? So it's gonna help by following a cybersecurity framework.
Yeah, I mean, yes, picking a framework is definitely going to align your business to a lot of different compliancy standards. There's
Right.
still going to be holes left,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you just have to assess that as you go.
Right.
But following a cybersecurity framework definitely positions your business to be in a more secure situation.
Right.
And again, I'm not going to say that security equals compliance, just like compliance doesn't equal security,
Right.
but being more secure definitely checks a lot more boxes in the compliance column.
Right. Yeah. And which one, picking one, again, they're good. Picking one that aligns most or best with your objectives, with your type of business. Um, because you don't want, I mean, I don't want to say you can be over compliant or over secure, but um, you also don't want to be spending a lot of money that you don't need to, right? I mean, that's the other
Sure.
part of this. Like, there's companies we talk to that have bought stuff and they're like, oh yeah, we bought that last year. Did you implement it? Well, I don't know. I'm not quite sure. Well, why'd you buy it?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing with it? You're just burning money. Like at that point,
Yep.
you wanted to check a box. That's what you wanted to do, right? I mean, obviously we can't talk to people that way, but and I don't. I would like to. Just because it's like, come on, what are you doing? You wouldn't let your child get away with something like that at school, hopefully, or in life growing up. Why are you letting your business go down that path with an employee doing something? Or like, there seems to be a disconnect with that. And I don't really understand. Maybe it's because we're dealing with adults and we think they're doing their job and they should be doing their job. Look, I've been in sales for a long time and I've had to fire salespeople. And typically you can tell, I say the ones that have the most brochures on their desk always have the worst percentage of quota because they're gathering and they're not out selling. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
It's just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know why that popped in my head. Oh, because people are you have to check on people, like you said, right? Trust but verify, inspect what you expect, however you want to say it. I know they're adults and they are probably in high up positions at the company. Hey, they're still people. They're still people, right? They may be
Yeah.
getting busy. Are you over as a leader, are you overworking your people? Are some things slipping through the cracks? And then they're just kind of like, oh, I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later. I'll get to it later. Well, unfortunately, cybersecurity and IT maintenance are the two things that we see that get pushed to the back burner while IT is fixing tickets, right? They're fixing that on fire thing right now. So,
Yeah. I mean, that's the function of IT, right?
yeah,
Is your hardware infrastructure and end user support. And yeah, cybersecurity and compliance are two completely different beasts and
yeah,
definitely require a different mindset and a different
yeah,
skill set.
yeah, for sure. That's right. I mean, exactly right. The mindset and skill set are completely different from those. It's okay. You just have to come to grips as a business owner. You're going to have to make some decisions here. And
Yeah.
it's going to be an investment. I mean, you think about it. I mean, we're not on this to like toot our own horn, right? There are other companies that do what we do. And this is a lot less expensive to hire a firm like us to come in and do this than it is for you to hire a CISO or a CISO and have them put everything in place and pay them 150 to $250,000 a year, plus put all the tools in place, right? I mean,
And you're still going to have to hire supporting staff, but
right,
that
right.
CISO is going to be quote unquote visionary, right?
Yeah, strategy. Yep,
He's going to
yep,
build the program, but
yep.
he still needs people to execute.
Exactly, exactly. But you got to bring somebody in. Do the like you said this several times. Have an assessment done annually. Hey, that's the minimum. If you want to just check a box, go ahead and do that. I would say quarterly, if especially if you've got IT people that are handling a lot of tickets. That means there's a lot of changes being done. There's a lot of things being fixed. Stuff gets changed. It opens up a vulnerability that you didn't know about. You're gonna leave that open for a whole year?
Right.
I mean, it's crazy. And when you talk about tickets, think about how many people, right? If you got a 10-person business versus 1,000 people, well, guess what? Stuff's getting changed a lot in that bigger environment. You better be, I mean, you should be just continuously monitoring that environment.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with that is sometimes an IT fix definitely it leaves a big gaping hole in some situations, right?
You,
Because again, what are they doing? They've got an
right?
issue, they're getting their asses chewed. You got to get this fixed now.
Yep.
Okay, well,
Yep.
I know to get this fixed, I got to do this thing, and I know if I do this thing, we could be opening ourselves up, but I'm tired of getting my ass chewed. I'm
Yeah.
just going to do it. I'm going to do it
Right.
for right now, just
Yeah.
to get things operational. I'll try to figure out a long-term fix that's
Right.
going to be more secure. And
Yeah.
guess what?
He never gets back to it.
50 more tickets just came in,
Yep.
and that is gone.
Yeah.
Never thought about again.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's so true. Well, we were talking about today, right? Before this call, what happened? You went to go to record, wouldn't record. What happened? Microsoft update into Teams, they turned something off, you had to go turn it back on. How many people did that? Think about how many people did that affect with their Teams calls when that happened,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah, I mean,
That was a vendor. That's not like internal support. That was pushed down from Microsoft.
and the notification for it was like non-existent, right?
Right.
Like I didn't get an email saying, "Hey, this change is
Yeah.
going to happen."
Yep.
And it is in the Microsoft admin portal, but it's not in the Teams admin center. So
Right.
like, why didn't I get a better notification, right?
Yeah.
And
See,
again,
I
you're
think we
not.
just threw ourselves under the bus because that means we hadn't done a podcast in a month because that's how long ago it was.
Yeah,
Oh well.
get busy, man. I mean, we got
Yeah.
a lot of things going on right now. I mean,
Yeah.
God, we've done
Yeah.
how many in-person seminars in the last month?
Yeah.
4 or 5.
Four of
We've done a
those.
couple webinars.
Plus all the assessments we've been doing. I mean, it's just gotten. I think the last few months again. I think people are just businesses are finally figuring out like I need to know what's going on. How do I figure this out? And they want to talk to somebody different, which is great. That's why we're here, right?
Yep.
I know that we've done some stuff. We've helped people kind of. We've opened their eyes to a few things, and one was a pretty large bank, right? And
Yeah.
he's like, I kind of think that's not well. And then we showed him like, yeah, it's not. So there's a lot of that out there. It's just crazy. And
Yeah.
it's big, small companies, national companies. Well, we were talking about the Forbes 250 list from last year.
Yeah.
Still
Yeah.
unsecure.
Oh, dude. It's crazy
Still.
because like we can see some changes that have been made, right?
Yeah.
So somebody's at least thinking about it now.
Hmm.
They still have no freaking idea what they're doing.
Right. Well, yeah, when they change it and they change it and it's wrong. Okay. So I know it's crazy.
Um, to wrap this up, I mean, what are some key takeaways that we can give our audience as far as like next steps for themselves in relation to compliance, cyber
Yeah.
insurance, frameworks, so on and so forth?
I would just say, so that was the second question out of 10. I'd say listen to the next, um, 8 podcasts, get the other questions. But you got to have an understanding of what cybersecurity is for your business, right? You can't just, you can't wing this. And leadership has to take a role in understanding it. They have to take a role in playing a part of this too, because if their security awareness training is supposed to be happening, they should be doing it. They need to be leading that, right? It's got to be a culture shift. And with that being said, you got to document what's going on. You got to understand, get better understanding, have documentation, be able to prove it, have evidence. Um, know when you're checking the box. Are you saying yes that you have something, and make sure you have it, right? If you're talking about a policy or a regulation, you're looking at certification, you're looking at compliance. Make sure you have what you say you have because it's going to come back to haunt you.
Yeah, and I mean, why wouldn't you want to do those things, right? Like, I think about again that customer we wrote policies for and how they
Yeah.
ended up turning out, and it's just like these are legitimately the things you should be doing.
Yeah.
You know, that organization happens to be part of their healthcare organization, so they fall under HIPAA, right?
Hmm.
So not only are they trying to get in alignment with their accreditation body, but they also should be in alignment with HIPAA.
Right.
And all those documents lay out exactly what they should be doing.
Yeah. It's your roadmap.
It's
Follow it.
adopting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't just adopt a document to check a box with a compliance or a regulatory body
Yeah.
or anything like that.
Yeah.
Take action on it.
Yeah. That piece of paper is not going to save you.
Yep, for sure.
So.
Well, awesome. What's the next topic going to be? What can we what little slice can
Oh,
we
the next
give?
one. So what did we just do? We just did, are we fully compliant with all the relevant industry regulations, cyber insurance policy requirements, and cybersecurity standards? That was number 2. Number 1 was what are the biggest cybersecurity threats to our business, and how are we addressing them? And the next one is number 3. It will be how are we protecting our sensitive data, and is data encryption a part of our security strategy? So data encryption.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Well, that should be an interesting conversation for sure.
Yeah. We'll just do it without the sound turned on and people like, what the heck? Like, that's how it works.
There you go. I like it. Or
Like,
put it
figure it
in just
out.
a completely
Yeah.
different language.
Read
Yeah.
my lips.
Well, awesome.
Cool.
Dan, I think today's episode was highly insightful,
Yeah, it was
especially when
good.
it comes to compliance and the difference of compliance and cybersecurity and the difference of
Yeah.
security and IT.
Yeah.
Um, we'd love to hear some of your feedback in the comments below. Also, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel to stay on top of what we have to offer.
Yeah.
I'm Aaron. That's Dan. This is the Watchdog Cyber C-Suite Cyber Podcast, and we'll catch you next time.
Yep. See y'all.